You're in here because, unfortunately, Joe's passed away. All right?
Joanne Samak was stabbed 6 times in her own bedroom. Her husband called 999 and said she'd done it to herself. The wounds ran in a straight line down her body. There were no marks on her hands from fighting back. For months, even the experts couldn't rule out that he was telling the truth. He wasn't. Joanne Samak was 49 years old, an interior designer who worked for Claude Hooper Interiors, out on the road constantly for the job, up most mornings by 5. She'd recently been made redundant, and rather than let it knock her down, she was already building something of her own, launching an interior design business under her own name. Her family would later describe her as loyal, kind, and caring to everyone that touched her life, with a wonderful sense of style and a passion for interior design, fashion, art, and nature. Her mother, Penelope, put it even more simply, saying that Joanne always was a woman who held everything together. On a quiet cul-de-sac in Droitwich Spa, Worcestershire, called Chestnut Spinney, she had built a home, a career, and a little boy who adored her. Her story with her husband began nothing like the way it ended. In 2011, on holiday with friends in Egypt, she stayed at a hotel in the resort town of Taba on the Red Sea. Working there in entertainment was a young man named Mo Samak, a former international hockey player for Egypt, confident and charming. What began as a holiday friendship slowly became something more. Joanne went back to Egypt again and again. A courtship stretched out over visits, phone calls, the kind of long-distance romance that either fizzles out or turns serious. For Joanne and Mo, it turned serious. In March 2014, the two of them married, a wedding so quietly arranged that even Joanne's own mother had no idea it was happening until it already had. Mo secured a spousal visa, and just before Christmas that same year, the couple settled together in England, in Worcestershire, ready to build a life. Neither of them knew how this would end. For a while, it looked like any new marriage finding its feet somewhere unfamiliar. They bought the house on Chestnut Spinney, made possible in part by a £170,000 contribution from Joanne's mother. Joanne's mother, Penelope, would go on to live with them. The couple had a son together. Joanne kept working, kept driving, kept building her career. Mo picked up what he could, eventually coaching hockey, including a spell with Wales's under 18S squad and time at a private school on the coaching staff. It was never quite steady work, never quite enough. By 2024, the cracks in the marriage had settled deep. Joanne was up at 5 most mornings and asleep by 8 most nights, worn out by a job that meant hours in the car. Mo kept different hours entirely. They had drifted, quietly, into separate bedrooms. He went to his mother-in-law with his unhappiness rather than his wife. He told her he was lonely. He told her he was depressed. He was depressed. He was unhappy. They didn't sleep together, Penelope Vale would later tell a jury. He questioned, too, why his wife still wanted to see her own friends, now that she was married. When Penelope asked whether Joanne herself ever admitted to being lonely, her answer was simple. She didn't ever admit it, no. She just said it is what it is. Underneath all of it sat money, and not only in the way it first appears. Joanne was the one bringing in a steady wage, and Mo struggled to hold down permanent work, quietly in contact with a debt advice service. But there was something else the jury would later hear. Mo was a named beneficiary on Joanne's life insurance policy, and on her pension. He always insisted to Joanne, and later to the court, that the two of them never argued about finances at all. And there was something else, something Joanne did not yet know. Back in 2009, before he had even met Joanne, Mo had briefly known a French woman at the same Egyptian hotel where he worked. They lost touch for over a decade. Then, during the isolation of the COVID lockdowns in 2020, the contact quietly picked back up again. By June 2024, it had become something more. On the 15th of that month, Mo travelled down to London to meet her. They had dinner. He kissed her. "I liked talking to her," he would later admit, from the witness box. "I liked the feelings I was missing with Joe." 4 days later, he told his wife he had feelings for someone else. He didn't tell her everything. He told her enough. Joanne was, understandably, devastated, emotional and crying, upset. The court would hear. Mo reassured her it wasn't serious. "I can't leave you," he told her. "It's just the feelings I'm missing with you." Whatever Joanne made of that, she carried on with her life. The following week, on the 28th, the family went to a school picnic together, nothing amiss. The next day, she had her hair cut, and her hairdresser remembered her as upbeat, easygoing, happy, someone who, in 10 years, had never once complained about her husband. That evening, the 30th of June, she was tired, nursing a cough, sitting in with her in-laws watching a film. It was that same evening that her young son repeated something to his grandmother that had clearly been said within the house. That Mummy needs alcohol, that she can't live without it. Joanne, hearing this, was visibly upset and denied it outright. Later that night, before bed, she texted her mother to set the record straight. "I've massively reduced how much I drink," she wrote. Then she did the sort of small, hopeful things nobody does the night before they plan to die. She set her alarm. She laid out a red dress, ready for the morning ahead. She had no idea. Just before 3 in the morning, 2 doors down from Chestnut Spinney, a neighbour named Chantel Fisher woke to a scream. 7 to 10 seconds long, she would later tell a jury. A gap, then a second, shorter scream, higher pitched. She was certain it was a woman. Not far away, Clifford Billings heard something too. 2 or 3 seconds of screaming that pulled him out of bed. He checked his window, saw nothing out of place, and went back to sleep just after 3:10. His wife, Margaret, heard something else entirely that night. A child, crying, as if frightened. Trial evidence would later place the fatal wound at somewhere between 3:30 and 3:40 that morning. Inside the house, something had gone catastrophically wrong, and it would be well over an hour before anyone called for help.
Please, emergency.
Please, any of you guys help. My wife is in the room.
What about your wife?
She's got a knife in the tummy.
She has a knife?
Yeah.
At 4:09 that morning, Mo Samak finally dialed 999. "My wife's got a knife in her tummy," he told the operator, as though it was something that had simply happened to her. Police and paramedics raced to the house. Body-worn camera would later show one officer beginning CPR on the kitchen floor, while another led Mo away, into the bedroom, out of sight. What they found was beyond saving. Joanne had been stabbed 6 times, wounds to her chest and abdomen between 2.5 and 10 centimeters deep. One blow had driven with such force it passed clean through her breastbone and into her heart. She would have died within around 20 minutes. Officers described her injuries, simply, as unsurvivable. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Mo was trained in CPR. In court, he would later admit he hadn't pressed hard enough and that he'd deliberately avoided certain areas because he didn't want to touch her blood. He was trained to save her life. He chose not to. From that very first phone call, his story was that Joanne had done this to herself. Then, questioned by police, the story shifted again and again and again. He said he'd woken to find her already stabbed. Then, that he'd woken to find her holding the knife herself, screaming, and that he'd tried to stop her before she moved into the bedroom and carried on. He said he watched her collapse, and that he was too terrified to call for help straight away, too busy crying and struggling to breathe.
You lied to the call taker when you made that telephone call. You lied to the police officers at the scene.
So you got up to the loo about 5 minutes before you placed the call?
Yeah, not just straight away. I rang.
There's something else worth sitting with. Detectives checked his phone from that night. No searches, no messages to anyone. Nothing that looks like a man in a panic trying to get help or trying to understand what had just happened in front of him. His phone simply stayed in the room with him. At a hearing on the 3rd of July, held by video link, he tried to explain away the shifting story. "I only changed my account because I was so scared," he told the court. "I knew I couldn't keep lying anymore." It was a strange thing to say about a story he was, in that very moment, still telling. Their young son, present in the house that night, would later be reported as saying something troubling of his own, that his father had been standing by a cupboard in the bedroom. That mummy hit her head on the corner of the cupboard. He asked whether his father would have to go to jail. His father told him only that mummy had died. On the 4th of July 2024, 3 days after his wife's death, Mo Samak, then 42, was charged with her murder. He was remanded at HMP Hewell, and on the 2nd of August, at Worcester Crown Court, he entered his plea, not guilty. Before a single lie had been picked apart in public, Joanne's family found the strength to speak. Jo was a loving, sensitive, and generous person, they said. She was so hard-working and talented. She was looking forward to so much in her life. We are so thankful for Jo and have been overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and tributes from all who knew her. We will continue to love and miss you forever. None of them yet knew how long the wait for answers would be. 12 people heard everything you just heard. They still couldn't agree. The case opened at Worcester Crown Court on the 28th of January 2025, prosecuted by Harpreet Sandhu KC. Sandhu laid out for the jury a woman who had everything to live for, set against a husband interested in another woman, worried about money, and with an eye, the prosecution suggested, on what he might gain from his wife's life insurance and pension. Of his claim that Joanne had turned the knife on herself, Sandhu was blunt. If it really were that Joanne had stabbed herself, she told the court, it should have been a very clear yes she did. She told the jury Mo had felt trapped in a loveless marriage. Mo, giving evidence in his own defence, insisted otherwise. Why would I kill my wife? He asked the court. Why would I kill her? Why would I not leave? I'm not a killer. Then came the evidence that should have settled it and instead split the room. A Home Office pathologist, Dr. Alexander Kolar, took the stand and told the jury something none of them expected. Joanne's wounds, he said, fell into an almost straight vertical line down the front of her body. There were no defensive injuries at all, none of the cuts and scrapes a person gets on their hands and forearms when they try to fight off a blade. He would not rule out self-infliction. And he said a third party couldn't be excluded either. If Joanne had been restrained or unconscious when the injuries were inflicted, there was, he told the court plainly, no concrete conclusion. For weeks, the jury heard it all. The marriage, the affair, the screaming two neighbours couldn't explain, a pathologist who wouldn't commit either way. Joanne's mother and brother took the stand, and friends and family alike rejected outright the picture Mo had tried to paint of a wife quietly falling apart. Still, after retiring on the 20th of February, the jury could not agree. 12 people had heard the hour-long delay, the changing account, the alarm clock, the dress laid out for a morning that never came, and a pathologist who said he simply could not rule out either possibility. They were discharged, unable to reach a decision. For a family who had already waited months for their first chance at the truth, it was a crushing setback. The Crown Prosecution Service confirmed within weeks that there would be a retrial, and Joanne's family were told, gently, that they would have to do it all again. The retrial opened at Worcester Crown Court on the 29th of September 2025, expected to run 5 weeks, this time prosecuted by Matthew Brooke KC. His opening was plain and to the point. The defendant was at home with his wife, Joanne, and their son. No one else was home, he told the jury. The defendant says she inflicted these stab wounds on herself. The prosecution says that we are sure that the defendant stabbed his wife and murdered her.
Victim's phone, Nadia, so no searches that relate to suicide, self-harm, stabbing myself, knives.
There's not even like the slightest little hint of.
Joanne's best friend, Caroline Edwards, gave evidence that quietly dismantled the picture Mo had tried to paint. I know Jo would have told me if there were marital or mental health issues, she said. She had seen nothing, no crisis, no secret drinking, just a woman getting on with her life, shouldering the household finances without complaint. Then, midway through the retrial, detectives received new information. A top, a grey top, wrapped around a sock. Inside that sock, another sock, and a flannel. Forensic testing came back fast. Both the flannel and the second sock had Joanne Samak's blood on them, Detective Constable John Coleman later told the court, with blood also found on the sleeve of the grey top. Investigators could never say for certain how it had got there. Mo, for his part, would later admit to hiding the clothes, saying he was afraid the finger of blame would be pointed at him because he was the only adult in the house that night. This new evidence was presented to the jury already sitting in judgment. The knife recovered from Joanne's body gave up far less. Its handle was wooden, and it had taken no fingerprints at all. And there was one detail the defence could never get around. That knife normally lived downstairs. For Joanne to have done this to herself, she would have had to get out of bed, go down, retrieve it, carry it back up, and then stab herself 6 times. The Crown Prosecution Service had one word for that version of events: unimaginable. The same pathologist evidence from the first trial was heard again, but this time, set against everything else, it read differently. Medical experts told the jury an enormous amount of force would have been needed to drive that knife through her breastbone. Joanne's liver, doctors confirmed, was basically normal, with no sign of long-term alcohol abuse whatsoever, directly contradicting the story Mo had been telling about his wife for over a year. The evidence of her friends, the prosecution reminded the jury, is that she enjoyed a drink but wasn't a drunk. Under cross-examination, Mo was confronted with exactly what his story amounted to. "You're a deceitful man who lies," he was told. His reply came back quietly. "I lied too many times, but I'm not a murderer." It didn't hold. Officers who had attended that night still had Joanne's blood on the gloves they'd worn to perform CPR on her. Mo, despite his own training, had none on his at all. Same pathologist, same husband, but this time, the jury had the loft. On Wednesday, the 29th of October, 2025, the jury returned, guilty of murder. Judge James Burbage KC told him, "You had the presence of mind in trying to reinforce your lying and frankly wicked story that Joanne had killed herself, to try and discard your clothing that bore blood as she lay dying on the floor, probably little more than a foot away from you." The judge called his account beyond comprehension, a wicked story told to hide what he'd done. Sentencing him to life, with a minimum term of 21 years, he was blunt about the hour that passed before help was called. "You waited and watched your wife take her last breath." In the dock, Mo shook his head and muttered. Security officers had to help him to his feet. Joanne's mother told the court her daughter had everything to live for. Her brother said simply, "A part of me died on that day as well." Joanne was a daughter, a sister, a mother whose little boy will grow up carrying a night no child should ever have to witness. Her family remembered her simply. Jo's zest for life was infectious. She was generous, creative, and full of fun. Most importantly, they said, she was an amazing mummy,